morning, beautiful people. Good morning. How are you doing? I hope you are doing extremely and exceptionally well. How are you? Let me get myself settled and comfortable. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes, yes. Good morning to you all. Good morning, Bonnie, Scotland. Good morning, Healing the Silence. And Jay, the flyer, Peter Folder. That's life, but not as we know it. Hello, Brett and Helen and Shin and Cavan. It's whiskey time with Sonia. Wait, what? It's only 9 a.m. British summertime. Are you kidding me? Let's do this, crazy bunny. Thank you, Martin. That's very kind of you. Good morning, Maria, and all of you wonderful, wonderful people. Morning, Chris Smith. Morning, Mrs. A. Earwaker. Is that really your name? Because I love it. Hello, Hazel. How are you? I hope you are well. Hello, Kath. Synchronized Souls, Curly Crew, Dr. Moorhen. Lovely to see you all here today. It is Friday, June the 28th, 2024. It's just gone 1 minute past 9 a.m. British summertime. Oh, what a week this has been. Extraordinary week. Did we realize that on Monday, when we were broadcasting, the world's most famous political prisoner was already well past negotiating his release, and woke up on Tuesday morning in the UK to discover that Julian Assange had indeed been released from the maximum security prison in London, Belmarsh. And well, what can I say? That's so many emails about it. I mean, just literally insane. Obviously, very interesting development. Lots of questions about this. I'll be discussing Julian Assange with my first guest, Matt O'Brien, who has campaigned for Julian Assange for 5 years. But of course, Julian Assange's release has set the cat amongst the proverbial pigeons. He didn't physically look how people expected him or imagined that he would. Some people immediately want to believe that there is a conspiracy theory attached to his release. Some of the stuff I read reminds me of why truthers often get sort of ignored as cranks. But to be fair, a few people wrote in with good, honest intentions asking me to explore this further, and I will. Not necessarily with Matt today, but if not with Matt, then I will over the coming weeks. But just to say, I think lovely Louise, is one of them whose email really pretty much summed up the theme of the emails and messages I was receiving. She said, "Hi, Sonia, it would be great if you would investigate this latest event of Julian Assange being freed. I feel it was all staged. Why? Firstly, the short video of him walking towards the waiting plane showed the side rear of him, and in my opinion, didn't look like him. This person showed a well-fed, healthy person, whereas a court a couple of months ago said that he was so ill that he couldn't appear. Secondly, his wife was in the UK on the 19th of June, but in Australia on the day of him being free. Why? Surely she would have stayed to await his freedom. Thirdly, why has he sold out by pleading guilty to espionage charges, which could have dire effects on freedom of speech? Lastly, is he still alive?" All very, very good questions, Lou. Don't necessarily agree with all of them, but I promise you they will be addressed. Now, this is a very complex situation because the thing is, people, for the most part, are neither heroes or villains, right? He's a journalist who was doing his job. And now, sadly, he and journalism has been criminalized for doing it. Yes, he has not always got it right, unquestionably. And I can't claim to have been an unquestioning Assange supporter. No, I haven't been. But I definitely felt it was absolutely wrong that he was banged up. I didn't agree with his comments on 9/11, that it was fake, not worth investigating. But we cannot ignore the fact that he exposed extraordinary stuff to do with Iraq and to do with American military. And as I say, we'll be looking at that in more detail. And Louise also wrote about the show link. She said, "I do watch the show later in the day, but unfortunately there are no links to any information for people that may get mentioned." They are, Louise, darling. We put them, our lovely mods rather, put them in the chat as we're talking, but I absolutely take your point. So from now on, I will make sure that the links are also in the description underneath the video. See how you're all shaping this show, literally. And talking about shaping this show, you may notice that it's slightly brighter around here. Do you remember the other week, the lights literally blew when I was broadcasting? Well, thanks to very, very, very exceptionally kind, wonderful people out there, I have been able to purchase new equipment this week, including decent lights. And let's hope these don't blow. Hey, how are you all doing? Hello, Hazel. Head out to work, whatever I miss. Oh, Hazel says, looking forward to listening to you today as I head out to work. Whatever I miss, I catch up with later when I get home. I love your show, Hazel, and I love you, darling. Hello, Marshall. Good morning to you. And can I just say thank you to Irene D from Queensland in Australia for your astonishing wealth of pictures of geoengineering in your part of the world. Keep those pictures coming in, folks. I've had loads this week. Let's capture this moment, and eventually I will be able to do something constructive with them. If you can, tell me where you took your picture and on what date. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Now, Trump, Biden debate. What a shower. Did anybody see it? 90-minute head-to-head debate on CNN last night. It was an absolute disaster for the Democratic Party. Would not be impossible that Biden is now going to be replaced for the general election. These are the two oldest presidential candidates ever. Biden quickly lost his way. He's not fit for the job. He's not. He was mumbling. He was stumbling over his words. He was losing his train of thought. And Donald Trump was seen pulling faces of shock as Biden continually lost his train of thought and again appeared to freeze. Let me be really clear here. This is elder abuse. Yes, it is. He's the figurehead of the Democrats and they want him, but he is incapable of leading at all, much less with any authority. This is not an attack on him because people are blessed to get old, but he is not in the right place. And when he was saying things, absolute huge howling mistakes, when he said things like finally beat Medicare, and Trump was, he beat it to death. All these people coming in, destroying Social Security. Biden will wipe out Social Security and Medicare. So he was right in the way that he finished that sentence. And even though, they're the two oldest candidates, and I am no fan of any of them, let us be clear. But in terms of sharpness and just ability to be able to debate and fight back, Trump won. I mean, hands down. And Jill and Trump's team obviously capitalized on it. They later released videos. And one video entitled, needless to say, the drugs didn't work. Oops. And Jill Biden, of course, Biden's wife, was captured in a video telling her husband he smashed it. Smashed what exactly? And absolute similar nonsense. And then she had to lead him off stage because he was so disoriented. These people are horrible, aren't they? They're absolutely grotesque, repugnantly horrible. Yes, they are. There's no two ways around it, really. Quick coffee. Yes, crazy bunny. Get that quick coffee. I can't speak. I think I need a little glug of my warm water before we progress. Hello, Angie Mac. How are you? Hello, Catherine. Yes, Yvette, good morning to you. What do you mean my comment hasn't gone through about Assange? What did you say, my love? Shug, it is absolutely ridiculous that anyone thought he was a genuine president. President is an absolute mock. It is elder abuse, Trudy. Get the poor bloke in a care home and let him sip tea in a garden somewhere with a blanket on his lap. Absolutely. You would get more sense out of a table leg, said that's life, but not as we know it. As I say, we have a full pack show. We'll be looking at the latest developments in the Slater case. We'll be looking at this week in court in the retrial of Lucy Letby. We'll be looking at child marriages around the world. Yes, that's still really a thing. Shocking, isn't it? Right, but before we do all of that, why don't we welcome in our first guest? And our first guest is somebody who has campaigned relentlessly for Julian Assange, for the release of Julian Assange. And I first met Matt outside the High Court in February. And let me just check he's all connecting. There he is. Matt, can you turn your phone around the other way?
Yeah, right on.
There you go. Matt, good morning. It seems so strange not to see you in your orange boiler suit, Matt.
Yeah, that's right. It's strange for me too. I don't know what to wear anymore. I've been wearing that for 2 years now, and I just bought this tie-dye shirt because I'm like, I don't know where to go from here, but let's start somewhere.
Well,
So this is what we have today.
this is the color of freedom. We're loving it. We're absolutely
That's right.
loving it. Everybody, this is Matt O'Brien. I hope I've pronounced that right, Matt. I probably haven't. I'm terrible with name
Close enough.
pronunciations. But we actually met for the first time outside the High Court in February this year, when obviously Assange's lawyers were asking for permission to appeal. It wasn't even an appeal. They were asking for permission to appeal. And obviously the chess game went backwards and forwards, as we all know, but it was an incredible turnout outside the High Court for 2 days. And then most recently again, Matt, you have, as I say before you came on, you have been campaigning for the release of Julian Assange. Is it about 5 years?
That's right. 5 years ago, started with a Facebook profile pic. A friend of mine had, just showed slacktivism has an impact because 5 years later, I've done almost nothing else. From that day, I saw my friend's Facebook profile pic. It was Julian in the van looking sort of disheveled. And I only vaguely knew about this guy. And just seeing that keeping on coming up on my friend's timeline, I just was like, I'm going to check that out. Like, I'm going to check that out. And the first article that I found happened to be the one by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Meltzer. And wow, 40 minutes later, I've read that and I am shocked. I couldn't believe it. I was not an activist at that time. And I decided right then and there, I was going to do anything I could to stop this. And that's what I've done for 5 years. I've literally given away everything I've owned, flown halfway across the world,
Wow.
sacrifice everything because everything's on the line. As far as I can say, this is the greatest threat you could say to freedom this century. And we've had a huge success here, and I think we can be very proud and celebrate that. So it's I would say we've won, but I'm not saying there's still a bit more to do, I'd say, but
There
we've done the
is.
major victory. So Julian is free and it's fantastic.
Now,
So
here's
thank
the
you,
thing.
everybody.
He is free. He at
Yeah.
last, free at bloody last, frankly, and obviously
Mm.
spent 7 years in the Ecuadorian embassy because America was obviously trying to take him at that point anyway, and then 5 years in a maximum security prison, never charged with anything. And so obviously part of the deal of granting him his freedom was that he would accept a plea deal. Tell us your thoughts about this plea deal, because, and this is absolutely no criticism of Julian. Anybody in their right mind would have done the same thing. 15 years of being locked away, right, out of sunlight. It is time. He's done enough for journalism. Trust me on that. But let us talk about this Espionage Act and journalism being criminalized. Matt, what are your thoughts about it?
Exactly right, Sonia. His lawyer said it very well when they came out of the court. He said that Julian Assange has just pled guilty to journalism, and that's the key. So that's right. Julian, there's nothing more. We gave the United States plenty of chances. The Australian government campaigned on behalf of him, and many times diplomatically asked them to bring this to a close, to drop the charges, to let him out. They didn't manage to do that, and shame on them. Really, Julian's free, but the US has really they don't quite realize yet, but it's them that has been on trial here. It's them that has indicted themselves and ruined their own integrity here. They had the chance, but they've chosen to criminalize journalism. And why do I say it's because the United States is built on the idea of freedom of speech. That's how they get away with all of their invasions around the world. Well, we're fighting for democracy, so we're going to go and bomb this country, Saddam Hussein, and we're going to take his oil. Those are the spoils. So now when they fly around the world bombing places, I mean, can they really say that they're fighting for democracy? No, because they have
No.
just criminalized an international award-winning journalist. And until they undo that, that's the bit that I was talking about before. The battle isn't quite necessarily over. It's over for Julian, but is it over for the United States and for the Western democracies? No, because until the Espionage Act is reformed, I say burn it. Burn the Espionage Act. you know, none of these truth tellers like Julian Assange or Edward Snowden or Chelsea Manning are safe, and therefore none of us are free to know the truth or safe. Yeah.
That judge that he had to do the plea deal with, though, nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I'm going to refer to some of the remarks here. And Stella highlighted this. Stella Assange, obviously Julian's wife, highlighted this, that the government has indicated there is no personal victim here, right? They were claiming, obviously, that the release of this information resulted in, you know, casualties and danger to all manner of people. And now they are having to admit there is not a victim here. So that means those 5 years in Belmarsh, an absolute lie, right? Because you have to have a victim if there's a crime, right?
Yeah, you would think so. There's not even really any substance that he put lives at risk. You know, the White House press secretary Matthew Miller yesterday said that, well, if you go out drunk driving and you don't hit anybody, it's still a crime. That's a great argument. Okay, but the problem with that is that Julian did not. There's no accusation that he released unredacted files. He redacted them. It was actually the Guardian publishing a book with the password to the cables that allowed them to go wild. They ended up on Pirate Bay. So they know that's the case, and they've been lying through their teeth this whole time. I mean, you can see Matthew Miller on the stage when on the podium, he smirks. You know, I've learned to see those little tells. They smirk when they're not being sincere. So, but you see Reuters, you know, publishing, put lives at risk. I mean, really, that's the headline they chose to go with yesterday when Julian Assange is freed after 15 years. Julian Assange put lives at risk, repeating this smear. So listen, pay attention. This is why you should thank you for everyone for following Sonia Poulton and great journalists like her who have covered this case. This is a watermark, you know, a benchmark. Any journalist that has stood up for Assange, follow them, because they're able to spot the lies. They're able to stand with integrity, no fear. So I commend you, Sonia. And these are the journalists that we must follow now. Screw Reuters, pardon my French, you know, screw them all. Even the Guardian, they too little, too late. They stood for him towards the end, but too little, too late. They did not do enough.
Right.
So yeah, this is disgrace. And yeah, I even met the general who led the invasion of Iraq a few weeks ago.
Wow.
I met him at a festival. It was quite amazing. I asked him point blank, so is the reason you might not want to support Assange because he put lives at risk, because he revealed names of informants and put them at risk? And he said, no, not really. He said, no, not really. So
it's extraordinary. The whole thing is extraordinary, but I don't think it could have been summed up better than what Kristin Hrafnsson, obviously editor at WikiLeaks, said. And he said we should never underestimate the power of people to come together to make history. And that is the reality. This was people-led. This was absolutely people-led. Right. The establishment were determined to keep him in as long as humanly possible. Absolutely. And were it not for people like you out there in your orange jumpsuits doing a Guantanamo Bay and showing all the issues like in people's faces, wonderful stuff, he'd still be inside. This is down to the power of people, isn't it, Matt?
Oh, 100%, Sonia. And a lot of people have been saying this week. A lot of great voices, you know, Chris Hedges and people like, you know, Craig Murray and Stella Assange. You know, they've all acknowledged that this was a grassroots movement. And please, everyone, take this lesson. This was a huge one. So many people never thought Julian would see the light of day again. I personally always believed in my heart he'd be free, but I was an anomaly. You know, they wanted him so bad. Oh. If we can free Julian Assange, we can do anything. So never, ever, ever accept the excuse when people tell you there's nothing you can do. Yeah. Well, who am I? Well, you can do a lot. I mean, you don't have to go out every day wearing an orange jumpsuit for 2 years like I did, but everybody that's played a small part in this chain, bless you, and look at what we've done. This is a testimony to the people's ability to make freedom happen, and it'll shine for all time.
Hallelujah to that.
I've always been aware of that. Yeah.
So Matt, obviously with him coming out, it then set online all manner of people saying this is staged. He is controlled opposition. You must have seen all these posts, Matt. I've largely ignored them, although I did get quite irate on X this week and just said it's like so easy for people from behind anonymous accounts to say, you know, he shouldn't have accepted a plea deal. These people literally cannot stand up and be counted, but they're telling a man who's been locked away essentially for 15 years that he shouldn't have accepted a plea deal. How do you respond when people say this is all part of theatre, all the world's a stage, he's not one of us? How do you respond to that?
I think that I for one always wait for evidence before I make a determination. We have to be very careful when we hear narratives from the mainstream media, but also from underground media too.
Yes.
There's no reason you shouldn't take the same level of scrutiny to both, because let me tell you, like, you might be on Rumble, you might be on 4chan, whatever it is. Do you really not think that the deep state has people there trying to manipulate the narrative there, posing as, you know, you talk about controlled opposition, what about controlled rebellion? Like, there are people on there spreading narratives to undermine movements and cause chaos. And I'm very cynical. I mean, I know in my heart that's absolutely preposterous. I mean, I've spent time with Julian's family, looked at them in their eyes, you know, that you cannot fake. People have said their actors, like, it's the most disgusting. I can't even give time to it. It just makes me feel a bit ill.
Right.
I feel sorry for people that, but I can, you know, look, Julian is a hero for the ages, and his family have fought so valiantly for him. And I mean, look, people can believe what they want, but listen, think about when you don't have evidence, at least look at the motives for,
Right,
you know,
right.
we know what Julian's revealed. That is a fact. There's no way a controlled opposition would reveal the most evidence of US state crimes in history. That just, please, that is preposterous. There's no way. There's no way that benefits, I'm sorry, the United States deep state, the cynical, corrupt powers of the United States, to, like, oh yeah, publish all our crimes so that what? Controlled opposition, that's completely uncontrolled opposition. I'm sorry.
Right. Matt, do
and
you
as far
think
as the plea deal, just briefly, yes.
I hear you, mate. But
yeah.
do you think it's because we've been lied to so much and people have been forced to unpack so many lies that sometimes it's difficult to realize at this stage now what is true and what is fact? It's almost like we've been set up, haven't we, not to believe anything?
Sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. But again, that's where I say also don't believe what you hear on, and you know, don't always trust what you hear in independent media. You can find journalists that consistently tell the truth, and you can have some level of trust in them.
Right.
Like I say, you know, I've found journalists like yourself and others in this campaign that I'm going to have a lot of faith in, but I'm still going to, you know, take a scrutiny
You have to.
wherever you go. You know, you've got to do that. Yeah.
You have to. I wonder what it's like for him readjusting now, and his family, because his boys have never seen him outside. So this is a huge, major adjustment for all of them, isn't it? And I do think that kind of rush to attack, literally on Tuesday morning, literally as I was waking up, I was already receiving messages in my inbox from anonymous accounts saying A, B, C, and D. He was part of a cult when he was growing up. Listen, many of us had a dysfunctional background. Trust me, he would not be the only person. That still doesn't make him a CIA asset. It still doesn't.
That's right.
And honestly, Matt, I think to a degree it's that whole kind of crabs in a bucket phenomenon. People, you know how crabs are in a bucket, they pull each other back down, don't they? They don't want any of them to escape. And it's almost like that. It's like people want to keep us in this little circle and not allow anybody to get beyond that. But anyway, the point is Julian Assange is free. We've campaigned for it. It's happened. He's reunited with his family. Matt, onwards, right? But obviously we've got to get that espionage charge reversed. We have to get that changed. Moving forward, Matt, finish us off. What do you want to say?
Well, that's exactly it. Yeah, well done. It's the Espionage Act that must be reformed and repealed until this is really over. So the key elements to the Espionage Act: why is it the most dangerous legal weapon in the world? Because it's been used internationally to jail an award-winning journalist for revealing the most state crimes ever in history. If that's not enough, it doesn't allow you a public interest offense. That's why it's so dangerous. So he could go into the court, and some people out there will say, why didn't he go to court and fight these charges, you know, if he's innocent? because he goes into the courtroom. He's not allowed to tell the jury what he published, even if it was evidence of horrific crimes,
mad.
or why.
Yeah.
And even Snowden says he'll go and face a jury if he can do that, and they won't allow him under the Espionage Act. So it needs a public interest defense. The second most terrifying element of it is it allows the CIA to determine where you're detained and how. In other words, they put you in 24-hour solitary confinement. That is abhorrent torture. Read Joshua Schultz's letter. It's terrifying. He's in solitary confinement right now. We've got to get him out. He revealed the CIA's spying tools on our phones. It's horrific torture, far worse than death. Some people say to me, "Oh, he's lucky he's not in Russia. They'll just kill him." It's like, oh my gosh, you have no idea. Like, think about being in a room for 24 hours a day for the rest of your life, never leaving it, never speaking to another soul. You will be begging to die, and you will wish. So we got to get the solitary confinement out of the Espionage Act and allow a public interest defense. So please, this is not over until that happens, at least as far as Western democracy and the United States. So it's a big win to get Julian free. Huge loss, historic shift, absolute tyranny we have in the US-led world right now. The other alternative, though, is like, let the US be a tyranny. Let's find other ways and voices and countries to lead on press freedom and democracy, because it is the age of transparency and information.
Yes, it is.
So bless you for your show, and keep spreading the word, everybody.
Pleasure. I'm so glad you could join us this morning. And of course, no, it's not a coincidence that it's happened at this stage and before the US presidential election. I'm sure that isn't a coincidence at all, because if anybody knows this story, they will know that it was Trump who pushed for this. And while Biden is still sort of president, it looks good on the Democrats. So of course, there's always political machinations going on in the background. There always are. Matt, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Really, really appreciate it. I still can't adjust to not seeing Matt in orange, but it's absolutely brilliant. Take good care of yourself, Matt.
Bless you, Sonia. Thank you, everybody.
Bless you. Take care. Lovely to see you. Wonderful, wonderful to see Matt. And yes, lovely people. Hey, don't get me wrong. I get it. I get reservations. I really do. When stories are made this massive, you have to wonder why, right? But I mean, the reality is this is a massive story in its own right, right? You're welcome, Shin. You're absolutely welcome. Pink Diamond said he's strong for enduring that, but solitary confinement is actually torture and prisons use it as punishment for low-level rule breaking. It needs to be a last resort for safety purposes. And Shug said, how often do they need to display how evil they are before it finally clicks with people? And Chris says, thanks, Matt. Great news. Trump and Assange are related, says Catherine. No, really? I mean, honestly, I'm going to look that up, right? They aren't reservations, Sonia. People's BS meters are firing off. Yeah, Rowie, it's easy for you to say that, though, because you're actually... look at all this. He wasn't in solitary confinement. Rowie, I don't want to be funny, but you're behind an anonymous avatar, right? You're behind an anonymous avatar. Like, we know who Julian Assange is, but we don't know who you are. And no disrespect to you, mate, but you could actually be legit controlled opposition in my comments right now, couldn't you? I mean, that's a fact, right? Greg, have you seen the video exposing Tommy Robinson? That was an alarming video. Now, obviously, those are all just allegations and accusations. Don't know the truth of it. And I will comment on that later, actually, Greg. Let me find my notes about that. But very, very odd. And then, of course, he then gave an interview where he was disputing what was said about him. And let's be frank, he wasn't operating on all cylinders. No, he wasn't. And Marcus Aquarius says the fact that MSM ignored Assange applies to me that this is legit. I just singled you out, Rowie, because you're here making the biggest noise about him being controlled up, but we can't see you, right? And so anyway, Operation Pogo, what was that? Yes, now sail away. You've no idea who Assange is other than what you were told to believe. But the same applies to you, though. There's far more evidence to suggest that he was truly in the Ecuadorian embassy and then in in a prison, then there isn't. I mean, some people are like, oh, he's going through underground tunnels and everything. Yeah, in your imagination, unless you can actually give me some legit, real evidence to back that up, then come on, let's get real about this. He a card still to be played out. He was foaming at the mouth, says Shanti. Yes, he was indeed. Right. Let us welcome in our next guests, right? And also don't forget, around here, you don't have to agree with me, and I don't have to agree with you either. It's free flow of information. But I will be looking at Lou and other people's emails in the weeks to come and drilling down on this more, because that is what we do around here. But for today, I feel that it was absolutely right to bring on Matt and to discuss that. That felt absolutely appropriate at this moment in time. And here is Mark, and here is Jane. Good morning to you both.
Hi.
I have everybody, and I don't have everybody on the screen. That would be slightly ridiculous. This is Mark Wilkinson and Jane Gould. They're from the Edinburgh People Party. Good morning to you both.
Good morning,
Sonia. Thank you very much for inviting us.
Absolute pleasure. Delighted to have you with us. You are, of course, I met you the other week when I was in Edinburgh, and you were standing, to my knowledge, is it 5 people in Edinburgh?
Yes, there's 5 candidates. We're all standing together as independents, but we've since Rishi Sunak's snap election announcement founded Edinburgh's newest political party, which is Edinburgh People. So we're all members of Edinburgh People, and we're all bound by its constitution, which is to first and foremost represent the people of Edinburgh. Unfortunately, it takes 2 to 4 months to register a party with the Electoral Commission. So the party name won't be on the ballot paper, but our names will. So we're standing as independents. But yes, you're right. There's 5 of us, and we've all done it in the last 5 weeks.
I mean, it is quite a huge achievement, in all fairness. It's very, very difficult being an independent party, no doubt about it. These things aren't easy. But the fact that you're standing 5 people already is something of an achievement. Both of you are standing. Mark, you're standing for Edinburgh Southwest. Jane, you're standing for Edinburgh East. And is it Musselburgh? Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah, Musselburgh.
Musselburgh, okay.
Actually, and that's been a bit of a bone of contention, because for some reason the constituency's been divided up to include Musselburgh, which is a separate town to Edinburgh. So it turns out people of Musselburgh are actually not very happy about being lumped in with that, but that's another story.
Well, so this is interesting. Obviously, one of the reasons why I said that on our live stream, we're going to give platforms to independents, is simply because people like you never get an opportunity in the mainstream. And so that is hardly a democratic, people aren't being given a democratic choice. They're being, obviously, the whole uni-party system. And one of the slogans, in fact, the slogan for your party is, do not elect career politicians again, elect people. Mark, talk to us about that. What makes you more people than other politicians?
Okay, a simple explanation is that I've been in the city chambers when there's been a full council and watched the councillors vote on amendments to the law, and there are 60 councillors, and when they vote, what you would expect is 60 hands to go up during the course of the vote. However, that is not the case. I was very surprised. Only 5 hands go up. 1 hand goes up to represent all the councillors, all the Labour councillors, how they're voting. A second hand goes up to represent how all the SNP councillors are voting, etc. Right? So there's a flaw in this block voting system, and the reason it's a flaw is that it's not allowing the open debate that is required in order to sort of cross-examine policy in such a way for it to be as good as it can be. So, for example, even if you've got maybe a couple of Labour councillors that want to kind of vote against their party, what they have to do is they then have to persuade within a separate meeting, they have to persuade all of the majority of their councillors to support them, right?
Yes.
So they're not going to achieve that. So even when you've got councillors that want to vote against their party, they probably just give up really soon, realizing how hard that's going to be. So that's just an example, Sonia, just to explain how we are going to be different. in the sense that we will, once we have representatives in the council or in the Scottish Parliament, both of which are likely. Westminster, unfortunately, because of the first past the post system, is very, very unlikely. But our constitution is highly democratic, and it's a one person, one vote system. It's the members of the party that put forward policies. If 10% of the parties support the policy, then it goes to a vote. If there's a 2/3 majority, then it becomes party policy. And we'll be doing that on a biannual basis. There'll be a review of the party's policies. And the candidates, ourselves, me, Jane, Nick and Mark and Caroline, we are public servants. And we are accountable to our members, and that is built into our constitution. And that's what is going to make us different, is that we will be representing the interests of our local members, and we will and first and foremost we will give them a voice, but far more important than that, their voice will be listened to, and more important than that, it will be acted upon in such a way as to attempt to achieve the improvements that they want. And I've been, so
Jane, let me switch to Jane. Jane, tell me, what are the issues that matter to the people in your locality?
Yeah, well, it's interesting you say that. And, I've got involved in this, as Mark was saying, very, very recently. So really, you're talking about a matter of weeks. So in a matter of weeks, you can't actually, get involved to such an extent that you really understand the issues. So I guess that's to follow. But what's coming out is that we've been receiving hundreds and hundreds of emails. And actually, it's quite a diverse set of issues that people are looking at. I would say some of the main issues that people might be looking at is that they're basically just fed up with the political system, and that seems to be one of the main things. Really, people don't know who to vote for, which is the reason why I got involved in this. As I say, I've never been involved in politics before. But, I knew Mark and I knew about his idea. It all came together rather suddenly. And, there's 100 reasons you can talk yourself out of not doing it. You're very small. Is it going to work? Whatever. But I think that, we're sowing the seed of a germ of an idea that could really grow into a really big movement.
Mark, what issues are you campaigning on or hoping to be able to, have as your manifesto? Because I'm looking at sort of single issues here. Talk to us.
Well, the main strategy, Sonia, at the moment is to really inspire hundreds, if not thousands, of people from Edinburgh to join the party.
Right.
So in terms of so our priority at the moment is to really explain the concept that we've come up with of and the ultimate objective is to find a way of removing some. We're not going to remove all, but we need to remove some of the career politicians from office and replace them with people like me and like Jane, who are representing the interests of the people directly without a whip. Or if you like, the whip is coming directly from the people. So in terms of, a lot of people have talked about direct democracy, which is similar to the system they have in Switzerland, where there's lots of referendums.
We've actually got Neil Petrie coming up after you, who is running direct democracy. So he'll be drilling down on that. So that's really interesting. You've raised that up.
Right.
But I think what sets you apart is the fact that you're not going to have this political whip system where everybody is being whipped in one direction. You are dealing with individuals who are representing people. That's your strong point, isn't it?
Yes, and in terms of the direct democracy, once we have an MP, the plan is that on the Friday before, all the members will be emailed by the MP to say, right, next week I'm in Parliament and I'm voting on these bills, right? And here's some information about each bill. if you'd like to vote and guide me, how do you want me to vote? So that on the Monday morning, when the MP's on the train to Westminster, he or she's got a spreadsheet summarising how their members that wanted to vote have voted to guide them. And so that's a kind of form of direct democracy within the party. Okay. Now, there is one really important thing, Sonia, that I'd like to explain, because I know that a lot of your audience will be not from Scotland and will be from England. So it's very important that everyone knows that within the Scottish Parliament elections, we actually have a form of proportional representation, which is something that people are always unhappy about, the first past the post system, right? So the great thing is in Scotland, on the 7th of May, 2026, we actually have a realistic chance of having 8 MSPs elected to the Scottish Parliament. So this is why this is so important that we get as much support from as many people from all over the UK who are interested in what we're trying to achieve for that reason. So in terms of, and the reason that is that Edinburgh was divided up into 8 regions, and there's 8 regional lists, and those lists elect 56 of the MSPs on a proportional representation system. So Edinburgh People will very soon change its name to Edinburgh and Lothians People to include the Lothians, and that will be one of the regions. And then another region is Glasgow, and another one is Northwest Scotland. So we'll have 8 regional parties that represent the people locally in each of the 8 regions.
Right.
And they will have a list. And all we need, Sonia, all we need is 6% of the vote.
Right.
And we will get an MSP. So
Got
just
you,
as an
got you.
example,
I'm going to have to stop
Yeah.
you there just because of the timing and everything.
Yeah, that's fair
Obviously,
enough, Sonia.
these things aren't cheap to do. We're going to put up a link to your website. You need to be crowdfunding. There's no doubt about it, because these things aren't easy. Jane, just finish us off. Why should, even if, because the thing is, it sounds to me very much like where you're really coming from is you want to raise awareness of the party in this election. You're not necessarily assuming that you're all going to get voted in, but you want to raise awareness because you're moving forward to something else. So Jane, just finish us off.
Yeah, well, it would be really great if people had an opportunity to look at an alternative and actually think a bit outside the box, because we really need to radically change the way our politics is working. And I think, you know, we've come up with a solution, with an idea. There are lots of other independents. So I would say if you get the chance to vote, vote for an independent in your area. And particularly, I would be looking at Holborn and St Pancras. Please vote for an independent in that area.
Yes, I absolutely hear you. Andrew Feinstein obviously is in that area, and obviously this is exactly what we've been saying, and there is, because there is a sense, there are so many people who watch this who are politically homeless, myself included, but we have been talking and focusing and concentrating on the independence and the importance of them and not being ignored. As I say, we're going to put up a link to your website. If you're able, people, please do support them. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, everybody. This is Mark Wilkinson, and Jane Gold, and they are from is it Edinburgh People's Party? Have I got that correct? Is that
just Edinburgh People, just the one
Edinburgh
word.
People.
And the final thing to say, Sonia, is that if what we achieve in Edinburgh is successful, then it can be replicated all over the country.
Got you.
With people that are listening to your
Absolutely,
program.
Mark. I hear you loud and clear. I only do that to Mark because I've already got the measure of Mark, but it's no problem. I like Mark. He's cool. Take good care of yourself, everybody. This is Jane and Mark. Good luck. Very good luck. Take care.
Thank you very much, everyone.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. And not easy what they're setting out to do, because these things are never easy, are they? Right, let's have a look at those comments. Have I sufficiently upset some people? Healing the Silence says maybe the entire political system needs to be rebuilt to work differently. Maybe that's what we need to start working towards. I hear you. What's this? Ashley says the last time you saw Assange, he had a beard, was overweight and had bright blonde hair. Shave, lose weight, dye hair black, and no one will recognize you in public. Got you. Ray J says ban lobbying and corporate and international influencing. The system will work. They represent the people, not the oligarchs. And got you. What else? What have I got here? Yes, many are politically homeless now, sad to say. Rowie, you're going to need to calm it down, mate, because you're actually making what is amounting to defamatory comments about Julian Assange. And I don't allow defamatory comments here because I know what it's like to be sued for defamation. So, you know, talking about Jimmy Savile and stuff like that, not cool, mate, not cool. Heppelwyn, we do need more independence. Yes, we do. Absolutely, we do. And right, listen, I'm going to go very shortly to my next guest who's going to talk to us about direct democracy. Rowie, nobody wants you to leave. I'm not, you don't need to get pouty now and tantrumy. I'm not saying you have to leave. What I'm saying is, respect where you are. Respect where you are. We shouldn't be defaming people, right? I understand you're angry about Julian Assange. I get it, right? I get it. No, Rowie, he won't sue you. That's not how it works. You don't understand defamation law, right? And look, you're going to have to take good care of yourself, Rowie. I think that you're not coping with this at all. Greg, I think this is a fair point. I feel we will not find the solutions to our ongoing problems through the political system. I hear that. Greg, I hear that. And I'm not altogether sure what the solution is. Beyond Belief says empowered individuals represent themselves, right? And yeah, I get that as well, because I've always said I'm not, like, I lead myself and I implore other people too as well. And honestly, obviously, we saw that shower last night. And then this week, there's also been Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak doing their debate as well. And did anybody see where David Cameron got pranked, where he thought that he was having a foreign conversation to do with Ukraine, and he actually admitted that there would be no difference on who gets voted in, whether it's Starmer or Rishi Sunak. He actually admitted to that. I've got the quotes. I have to read that to you, right? And Paul the Hat says, Starmer is a different type of disgusting. You're not impressed with Starmer, right? Not impressed. Okay. Right. Let us bring in our next guest. Our next guest is going to be talking about direct democracy. And I think I don't know enough about it, but I'm going to find out more right now because I think it's important too. And it's about giving people options here, right? So let's see. Neil, are you there? Let's see. Neil. Yes, there he is. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing?
Good to have you. Neil Petrie, everybody, from Direct Democracy. And it's funny, Neil, because we are having, in the run-up to the election, we're allowing independent candidates to come on. We just had 2 independent candidates from Scotland, and they started talking about direct democracy. I said, we've got Neil Petrie coming on after you, who will literally talk about this subject. So talk to people about direct democracy, Neil. Talk to us about referendum and recall and what it all means. And what are you running?
Right, the direct democracy movement is really about getting referendums regularly for British people. We base it around the one we're looking at anyway, is the Swiss system. And you have a variety of ways of getting your voice heard, basically, under the Swiss type of direct democracy. So you'll have referendums where there are mandatory ones on constitutional issues, for instance, so the people decide they want to have mandatory referendums on, say, joining an international organization. And then you'll have optional ones where, when laws were coming out of Parliament in Switzerland, for instance, every time that law comes out, the people have an option to carry out a referendum on it. So if you get 1% of the voting public to sign up to your rejection of that law or an amendment to it, then you'll get a first past the post referendum. So you get that decision on every law if you want it. Doesn't happen all the time.
That could change everything, because the problem is, Neil, I don't need to tell you this, people are politically homeless. They are completely disenfranchised with the political system. Hardly anybody trusts anything that we believe, whether that is Assange being released or whatever. Like, the world stage has become a farce. Nobody knows who to believe or who to trust. But what we do know categorically is don't trust leading politicians, because they're all globalists. So there's a problem there right off the bat. And I saw a video that was sent to me, Graham MacArthur, talking about the biggest legal scandal in history. How does direct democracy have anything to do with this? And tell us about that video.
Yeah, well, I only saw this yesterday as well. And basically what was sent to me was a short clip And believe it or not, it was David Cameron in 2009 saying that we should have local and national referenda. He actually said this just before he got into power, of course. Now, what it appears to be is this Graham McCarthy, who I'd not heard of before. I think I'd seen him on Richard Vobes once. That was it, sometime quite recently. But basically, Graham had put together a case for getting referenda in Wales. He was looking particularly at Wales. Now, what happened, he then got this put forward through the Conservative Party, through Open Europe. He was trying to get this position, you know, where you could have referenda in Britain, in Wales in particular. And this was fed back into the Conservative Party in 2009. So that's why Cameron came out with this statement. But shortly after, Graham was imprisoned for a fracas, which he's still disputing. However, when he came out, he made the point, and he went to visit with the head of the Conservative Party in Wales, a Lord Bourne. And he put this case to Lord Bourne that we should have this system. And what he found out was they were just really trying to find out what he was doing. And they then put together this petition process, because they were in power by 2010. And then they put together, if you'll remember, the petitions, 100,000 for this and 1 million for that. And that is basically what he had proposed to them. But it was not referenda. These were not things that we could call forward as a proper referendum. They were just petitions to government. So they defanged what he had, presumably because he'd been in prison. So I think this is the issue that you've got. But he's obviously got the case that this was mishandled. His case was mishandled, and the head of the prosecution service at the time was Starmer. So it all gets a bit mucky, and you've got, you know, Starmer involved with something that is a bit of a scandal with this case. You've got direct democracy is the kind of the issue that then gets dropped from the agenda, despite the fact that David Cameron had said, we'll not only have, you know, the referendum with Brexit later on. Prior to that, he'd promised referendums at local and national level, but that got scrubbed from the history. Yeah.
I think that's fascinating. I think that's absolutely fascinating, not least obviously because David Cameron has been brought back as the foreign minister, and he was made a lord in order to be able to do that. So that in itself, I think, is really curious and very interesting. And obviously Sir Keir Starmer is obviously almost certainly going to be the prime minister next week. And so I do think that that is curious and that is interesting. But here's the thing, is that direct democracy doesn't only have to be used for political decisions, does it?
No, I mean, direct democracy, it's a system of allowing the people to speak, and it could be on a variety of issues, you know. And for instance, they have town hall meetings in America still where the town votes on, you know, certain aspects, bylaws, local issues, and they don't have to be laws. As you said, you could use it generically. And in fact, you know, we've helped a guy who's developing a thing called Block Vote, which is a voting application that is blockchain enabled. And that allows people to vote on it, and you can put whatever type of vote you really want on there. But because it's blockchain enabled, it's highly secure, because this is the type of thing that obviously the banks use for transferring money around. And so from the point of view of security, it's better than the government system. However, you know, it's not necessarily going to be required for direct democracy. The Swiss don't use technical means, but if people want to use technical means and they're acceptable, then there you go. You've got a blockchain enabled one that's being trialed right now by Richard Bourne at blockvote.org. So yeah, you can use it for a variety of things. The other thing the Swiss use, Sonia, is they use a referendum called it's the initiative, so that you could come forward and put forward your own proposal for a new law. So, you know, you've got the laws coming out of Parliament, but you've also got this option, because obviously not all parties want to tell us everything you know, we want to hear. So when we can turn around in Switzerland anyway and say we want a law on this, whatever it might be, the ECHR, House of Lords, whatever you want to have as a law, get rid of it or change it. And that can be done in Switzerland. So you've got those various options, but you definitely can make up one that you want as a citizen, as an individual.
We'll talk about that in a little bit. Let me refer to some comments here. Mama Bear says they won't allow us to have multiple referendums. It would give the people too much power. So, and I think that's a fair point. I think many people listening to this are saying, yeah, this is great. This is very nice in theory, but how would it really pan out in reality?
Right. You're correct in terms of, and you know, your viewer there. The reality is that this is not going to be easy, but it doesn't mean it can't be done. It's true that, you know, this is It's a tough task. However, if you want something that's really worthwhile, you've got to put some effort in, don't you? You know, that's the reality. And it's the same with this. We've got powerful interests against us,
Right.
as we saw there with Cameron offering it and then pulling it off the agenda. And in fact, 2 years before that, the Conservative Party had about 30 odd MPs who were pushing for a Swiss-style system, including Michael Gove, Kwasi Kwarteng, Priti Patel. So, you know, they've been pushed, but they've done nothing. So what I did was I worked closely with getting involved with reform, simply because Nigel Farage was in charge. I personally handed him my book, One Vote Away, which covers this. And the aim was to get a powerful figure who's outside of the centre to go forward with this idea. And we've got videos, many videos now, well, not many, but a good number, of Nigel backing direct democracy and calling for this reform. So he sees three major reforms that he wants to implement. It's PR, the electoral process, House of Lords, abolishing it or dealing with it, whatever the people want, and then also referenda on those important issues that the people want to call them on. From us, not from the system, but from the bottom up. And that's it. If you get that in place, Sonia, like you said, it changes everything.
It could change everything. Potentially it could. Let me read you this from Healing the Silence. So many people in the UK submit a petition on the daily and many don't get the airtime it deserves. A lot of the time, petitions are just a waste of time, aren't they?
Well, personally, you know, they're a means of getting something done, but
they do raise awareness or attention to situations.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what they've done is they've made it easier for us to come forward with the direct democracy proposal, where people can back people who are proposing we actually have the full-blooded system, not just going to Parliament and begging them to, you know, do what we're asking, but for us to go to them and tell them this is what you're going to do now. This is one of the advantages of direct democracy in the Swiss system, and Taiwan uses this, by the way, you know, national level, and Estonia. They've got a fully electronic version, actually.
Right.
I can tell you a bit more about that. That's interesting in a second as well. But yes, it's difficult, but it's being done. You know, we've got an MP now, Andrew Bridgen, supports direct democracy. On his own website, he's got a page there called The Solution. It's about direct democracy. Again, I handed in my book. So the two people I've actually handed my book to in politics have both gone for this. Nigel was the first. So I think, you know, once you know it's there and you're outside of the centre, you know it's the way to go, because people will be heard.
Fran G is actually in Switzerland. She says, we take many referendums here in Switzerland, but in the end, the establishment gets their way. Don't like the sound of that, right? And Graham MacArthur has joined us, who we're discussing, saying, hi, Sonia, there's a lot more to this than meets the eye. I'd be delighted to an interview for you. Please get in touch. You'll find something extraordinary if you look into this. I found it curious, Graham. I was absolutely, and Aaron, who had sent it to me, I said, can Neil come on tomorrow? And because I just thought this is an interesting one. I find this very interesting. So Neil, before you leave us, as we said, you can use the block vote for many things, and one of the things it's being used for at the moment, obviously, is to do with what I believe absolutely is a miscarriage of justice, that of Clive Freeman. We've covered the story in detail on this stream. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Clive Freeman was basically put inside for a murder long ago, well over 30 years ago, and you know, but he always claimed he was innocent, and he's taken that, you know, through the system where he could have been released 20 plus years ago, and he's still inside because he will not admit to his, you know, his guilt. So he's obviously, he feels very strongly about this for obvious reasons that he's not guilty. The pathology reports show that it was not what some said at the time of the trial. So he's got a huge amount of evidence he should be released. But it's been, again, it's another mess by the criminal justice system, and including these review systems that the government have in place. So we put together a vote, or, you know, with Aaron and Richard Borner and other supporters of Clive who are trying to get him out, and to get him released. He's in his 80s. He's not well. You know, he's stuck inside because he's got principles, and he will not, you know, admit to his guilt when he's not guilty. So he's got quite a spine, and he's hanging on in there, and we're hopefully getting him out so he can enjoy, you know, some freedom again.
We will put a link to your website in our description. And I believe we've also got, yes, we have. Thank you, Shin. Shin's already put it up in the live comments, which is fantastic. Neil, thank you so much for joining us this morning, giving us an outline of this. We very much appreciate it. Take good care of yourself. Hope it takes off. And what's this, Merv? It would be nice to be asked occasionally, but the establishment won't allow it because they know the answer. I know. And people are rightly cynical, Neil. We've all had enough, haven't we? We want it to change. We absolutely want it to change. And we're so sick and tired about it. We really are. So listen, thank you so much, everybody. This is Neil Petrie. Thank you, Neil. Take good care of yourself. Have a great weekend.
And
Thanks for coming on and explaining.
Bye-bye.
Appreciate
Bye,
it.
Sonia.
Thank you. Bye. Bye. And I see you are all lively in the comments. And Rowie, I am glad to see you're still with us. Listen, I'm very forthright. You know me, you guys, you know what I'm like, right? Is that I let you know what I feel. There are no sides to me, but I don't want to see anybody leave here. I don't. What's that? You're not the first to say that. I'm not cynical. I am a realist, right? Oh, Pink Diamond says, I think we should go back to having our leaders be ordained by God. I thought you used to say by the police. I was like, what the hell does that mean? Christine says it's all a big conspiracy. Healing the Silence said, imagine if no one voted for the major parties. Rowie, I love you too. Oh my God, I feel like I've been through some sort of lovers tiff live on air today. No, listen, I love, let us keep working through it, right? Let us keep working through it. Let us be able to disagree and still be able to stick together. Because this is what I think goes wrong with our side, is we get angry, we fall out, and then we kind of like, that's it, I'm over and done with. And I'm glad you didn't walk. Don't want you to walk. I want you to stay here. I want us to stay in this fight together, right? And that is absolutely brilliant. And I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Wendy, I can't help being forthright. It might be I'm on some kind of spectrum. Who knows? Should we look at some of the news now? Because what I wanted to do today is I wanted to do it so that we did our guests first and then we look at some of the news, right? Music, please. Music. I love music. I love music. Please, somebody suggest to me some good, like, the kind of music that I want to listen to today is winner music, right? Triumphant music, like, the kind I'm talking about. You absolutely know the kind I'm talking about. Right, let's look at this Jay Slater story because it's too insane, people. We have to look at it. We absolutely have to look at it. First of all, got me tease out. You're going to love this. Got me tease out this week because obviously it was hot for 2.5 days. Look, I found this, my old favorite. Oops. What does it say? Can you see it? There you go. Is that true, or did you hear it on the BBC? That was bought for me by a friend outside the BBC, an anti-lockdown protest, literally outside the BBC. Right, let's talk about Jay Slater. Well, this Jay Slater story gets more bizarre, doesn't it? And I want to break down this week's developments. And so the details that we have been told before so far, right, is that Jay arrived in Tenerife on Friday, June the 14th, with two of his friends, Brad Hargreaves and Lucy May Law. And it was the first time that the two boys had been on a solo foreign holiday, but not Lucy Law. She's a hardcore traveler in contrast to the two lads. Her social media account shows, I mean, she travels. This year alone, she's been to Malta and Milan, Ibiza, Barcelona, Malaga. Last summer, she was in Jamaica, Tenerife, Zante, Benidorm, and Budapest. That's impressive traveling, given that we're told she's an 18-year-old college student who lives at home in England with her mum, and she is not, in fact, an airline attendant. She's a frequent flyer indeed. Miss Law, there's no getting away from it, is a very interesting person in this case. So Jay, Lucy and Brad stayed together, Paloma Beach apartment, on the Sunday, which was the final night of the energy festival the 3-day energy festival that they'd gone out to. And we've seen images and videos of that final night. We've seen Jay on the dance floor. He's in various states of undress. In one, he's like in a grey t-shirt. In another, he's topless. And he also has a black bag with thick straps hanging from his shoulders pretty much throughout the clips. We're told that Lucy and Brad went back to the apartment, but Jay, again, we are told, elected to go off with 2 black men from Luton in England, travelled with them to their holiday home in Masca. The 2 men have been talked to by Spanish police and have since left the island. And the only reason that I highlight that they were black is because so is Lucy. And so have others. So that in itself, I think, is curious. Apprentice Jay Slater, we're told, is an apprentice bricklayer. He is, of course, from Lancashire in England. And he was, as I say, on holiday in Tenerife, so say, for the Music and Dance Festival. He was last seen on the Monday following the last day of the festival, 8:15 a.m. in the morning, walking uphill from the village of Masca in northwest Tenerife. He had, as I said, gone back to an Airbnb near the remote village of Masca with the 2 men. The 2 men have been interviewed by police and have since left the island, possibly to come back to the UK. And in the time that Jay has now been missing, which obviously is closing in on 2 weeks, Spanish emergency services have done the very best that they can. They've used helicopters and drones to search specific areas where Jay's phone last pinged. There have been confusions over potential sightings. We've heard that it was possible that Jay was actually sighted after his apparent disappearance watching football in a town, while others have said, no, he hasn't been there. His father and his brother have arrived. His father has been putting up disappearance posters in that town. And there's lots that's been said on social media. But notice how mainstream media are keen to demonize what has been said. Like This Morning and the Daily Mail are keen to push a narrative that internet conspiracy theorists are hampering the search. This Morning even put out a video about it. What I want to know is exactly how are people on the internet hampering the search, right? They're not. It's absolute nonsense. Yes, there will be somebody in the police whose job is to comb through public posts and see if they might be able to find any leads or information that could assist them. But let's be frank here. There's an awful lot of intel that has been put out online that should assist the police. Oh, yes, it should. And honestly, I'm not talking about people who are up and heading off to get involved in a search, because that can create problems. But I'm talking about people online who are putting up information, right? And the point is that why, like This Morning and the Daily Mail will demonize them and why they'll cuss them is because the very presence of people online who have more information shows that old media is redundant. They're dinosaurs, right? They believe, they wouldn't even initially tell you about Jay Slater's violent past. No, they weren't. They were silent for the longest time about it and about his convictions, along with a group of other lads for the attack of a boy around about the same age as them. And the thing is, sometimes people go missing, not because they got accidentally lost, but because someone took them, which brings me to, has Jay Slater been taken? The police have been exploring a sort of criminal drug underworld theme. Now, I think initially they were looking at a missing person, and now they're looking at it slightly differently. And so, yes, Jay's past may indeed be relevant as to why he has disappeared. And no, it's not wrong to suggest this, because as said, it might be relevant to finding him actually alive. There's no explanation as to why he goes off with 2 people who are apparently relative strangers to him. Who does that on a foreign holiday and with the prospect of having to make their way back, a proper trek, the following day? Well, I know who does that sort of thing, and it's that potential criminal connection that the police are looking into. And so I think that is interesting. But this week, a pack of hounds quite literally arrived, including sniffer dogs, specially trained dogs, arrived in Tenerife, and the Guardia Civil. They conducted ground searches, and certainly around the sort of last place that his mobile pinged. And the sniffer dogs are specially trained to cover large areas. But I remember in the Madeleine McCann case, when highly trained sniffer dogs were sent in, alerted repeatedly, and then were dismissed by the McCanns. Both parents, as I say, are now there, as is Jay's brother, and so is Mark Williams Thomas. I am not a fan of Mark Williams Thomas. He's basically a media investigator. He's a former detective. The nerve of this man. He was not a successful cop, not really. And his early freelance media career featured a criminal case in which he was accused of attempting to blackmail a funeral director over claims that more than one body was being put in graves. Really awful, horrible stuff, right? Well, he was cleared. Mark Williams Thomas was cleared of this charge. But going back to present, I find him just like horribly arrogant, just horribly arrogant. And I suspect that he's probably there with his next TV special in mind. He's speaking to family and witnesses, even though he himself admits that the Spanish police do not want this. The Spanish police have made clear they don't want Lancashire police or any of our cops, even though Williams Thomas is not a cop, don't want them interfering. Right. And then Williams Thomas went even further in a video that I saw where he says that unless these two men come forward, because he hasn't spoken to them, even though the actual real police have, he says, unless these two men come forward, he's going to put their pictures on social media. How dare he interfere in another country's police operation? Seriously, it's almost like he's trying to make a situation that would fail should convictions arise from this. So no, don't trust him, not at all. I think that he's an opportunist. I think he's thinking, oh, this is a great opportunity for me to get involved. And when they say things like the Madeleine McCann cop and the Nicola Bulley cop, that's ridiculous. That's like saying the Madeleine McCann journalist or the Nicola Bulley journalist. I'm a journalist and he's not a cop. So that's the thing, is that he is a media cop. Yes, he is. And he's got the Madeleine situation wrong. And honestly, I can almost never forgive him for what he did in terms of Oscar Pistorius and how he proclaimed that Oscar Pistorius was innocent. Poor Reva and her family. That's all I can say. There's also, of course, been a great deal of controversy about this GoFundMe withdrawal. Jay Slater's mum, Debbie Duncan, announced on Facebook yesterday that they were, well, she said, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for our support, kind messages and good wishes. It's difficult to wrap our head around what is happening right now, but we are not losing hope that we will find Jay and return home together. And so she said that they were in talks with GoFundMe to withdraw some of the then £36,000. She's said that we are, so this is what she said they need it for. I wanted to share that these funds will be used to support the mountain rescue teams who are tirelessly searching for Jay. Additionally, since our stay in Tenerife needs to be extended, we will also use the funds to cover accommodation and food expenses. Here's the thing though, Debbie, is people have to eat regardless of whether they're in Tenerife or England. So some people might have an issue with you using that in the same way as some people had an issue with Kate and Jerry McCann using some of the fund to pay some of their mortgage. So you've got to be careful how you use it. But she says, I'm surrounded by wonderful people who are by my side, but far from their loved ones. So we'll also be using part of these funds to fly them to Tenerife so we can support each other during these dark times. But the thing is, my question is, how much does she have access to? The whole lot? Because that's interesting if there is actually a criminal element, a potential criminal element to this case. Debbie has previously hit out at people. She's criticized social media users. She says they've been spreading unfounded theories. I'm really saddened by all your comments. You seem to be so bothered about this GoFundMe page. I really hope I'm not taking my son home in a body bag. Debbie, I completely get that. Mother to mother, I completely get it. But people have a right to be bothered about a GoFundMe page because people have been stiffed too many times. So I get it, right? Let's look at the friends and acquaintances. I think that we can, the best one absolutely to look at has to be Lucy Maylor. A mere 18, but appears to be something of a worldly wise young woman. She's holidaying with him in Tenerife, as I say. There was a recording on social media which claimed to be Lucy and Jay in a parking lot in a high state of emotion. I have not been able to confirm it's them, but if it is, that throws a really interesting complexion on the whole thing. Yes, it does. And Lucy has to be considered a key witness, as she is said to be the last person to speak to Jay before he went missing. She says he called her, you know, on that Monday morning from a secluded mountain pass in Masca. And Lucy, as I say, attended the festival with Jay. She said said he told of not being aware of his surroundings and desperately needed a drink, but having no water, having cut himself on a cactus, all manner of things. So when you've got to, obviously, anybody who claims to be one of the last people to speak to somebody who then goes missing, obviously has to be at the center of the investigation, no doubt about it. But Lucy is an interesting character. Let's not get away from that. I mean, she's hiding her face in interviews, for goodness sake, and she says lots of interesting things. As I say, the dance floor footage disturbed me a little bit. Frankly, Jay looked unstable. But also one stage, he appeared to be bending down when the cameras captured him. Images of him and Lucy on the dance floor talking. And, you know, it's very interesting. There's obviously that whole kind of thing of the last Snapchat picture, which was said to have been taken on the steps of the Airbnb that he was taken to. The searching continues. But I think that we are finally now starting to see what really has taken place. And I do think that it is highly likely that there is a very serious criminal element attached to this, and it is highly possible, given the degree of rescue and search that has taken place now, it is highly possible that he's been taken. And honestly, I absolutely pray for his safe return. We can all do awful, horrendous things, and I'm not attempting to justify his past behavior, not at all, but he's still a child in my eyes, and I'm sure, no doubt at all, that his parents and his brother want him back. But I do now understand why I had some reluctance around his mum and his mum's statements, because I do think it's highly likely that his mum had an idea of has an idea of more things than we think. I don't for a second think she's involved in, you know, his disappearance, not at all. But I think that his mum knows who her son is. And that's why when you say things like he's a good lad and all that kind of stuff, knowing that violent past, she's trying to convince the rest of us that he's a good lad. And the thing is that generally when people go missing, for the most part, people don't feel the need to go on about what a good person they are. It's like, this person's missing, please find them. But she did. Anyway, Jay Slater, I hope you are safe and well. And I hope that if anybody's holding you, they release you and we can get to the bottom of this and we can move on. Simple as that. Let me know what you think. I know that was quite a lot to cover there, people. He's a boy. He is a boy. We are parents. Yes, we are. David wants us to follow a certain route from South America to Europe. David Dwyer said a child doesn't fly abroad. I'm sorry, you're wrong. He's 19 though. He's not technically a child. He's just a child in my eyes, right? Got to be some 90s hip hop. That's life, but not as we know it. When people use good lad, in my experience, they are not, says Shin. I respect, but nonsense. What's nonsense? Tell us what's nonsense. Let's see. What's that? Is it true? No, the blue nomad. I've heard that. There's some crazy. I mean, I don't know. I don't actually know. Obviously, we've heard some crazy stuff online, haven't we? And some of it there is some truth in. And as I say, the reason that they're attacking, that the reason that mainstream attacks people online is because they know that online they can't compete with what's going on online. They can't. And they also know that, you know, like This Morning and newspapers, they know they're part of a dying media. It's reality. It's the way it goes, yo. Let's do a Lucy Letby update. She is, of course, a former neonatal nurse from the Countess of Chester Hospital in England. She's currently serving 14 whole life orders after receiving convictions in August last year for the murder of 7 babies and attempting to murder a further 6 between June 2015 and June 2016. She is now on trial, or rather was at Manchester Crown Court in a retrial, and she is accused of the attempted murder of baby K on February 17th, 2016. Miss Letby has pleaded not guilty. The jury in her original trial could not reach a verdict on the case, hence the retrial. She was cross-examined on Monday and Tuesday this week. She denies attempting to kill child K by dislodging an intubation tube. The prosecution, of course, used her previous convictions to support the case against her, and she denied that she had ever harmed any baby in her care. She was asked about her work colleague, Dr. J. Ram's evidence, and she denied much of what was in his witness statement. She was asked about making Facebook searches for child K, and she didn't have a recollection about that and didn't necessarily know why. And she was asked about her contact with child K on the night. She said she did not recall why she was in the nursery. She was asked about co-signing for summer medicine around this time, and she did not have a memory for it. And Letby said that she knew the tube in the baby had dislodged because she read about that in another nurse's notes, which were actually shown in the court. And it was unusual. This was a very, very premature baby. God bless it, and God bless the parents. Born at 25 weeks gestation, and it was unusual to have a baby of only 25 weeks gestation at the Countess of Chester, and it's absolutely becoming increasingly clear that they were absolutely ill-equipped to deal with this. And so officers had referred to Dr. J. Ram's allegations during police interviews, and said, and in response, that Lucy Letby had tried to fill in the gaps, adding, I was relying on what Dr. J. Ram was saying. But as I say, she was accused of attempting to fill in the gaps for an infant whose name they said she had been searching for on Facebook 10 months before the first police interview. And actually, when I stepped back and look at that, I thought that, I don't know if that's that uncommon, actually, to be searching for people in our care where something bad has happened. We want to know an update on it. I don't know. Anyway, she said in terms of what she was doing, that she had been following hospital policy, because when there was a problem with the baby, she wanted to wait and see if the baby would self-correct. And she said that there was a problem in terms of kind of hospital policy. It wasn't altogether clear. And kind of it went on. It was very interesting. And but she was accused of dislodging the tube, to which she answered no. She was asked about baby K and whether the baby had been active or not. So a lot of it's really interesting, but it is quite difficult. Obviously, it's a long time ago now. It's like 8 years ago. I think it's 8 years ago or 7 years ago at least. And it can be difficult to remember details. The barrister who was cross-examining her moved on to the baby's third collapse on that night, and referred to nursing colleagues saying that Letby had been in nursery 1 at the time performing certain duties, and Letby said, I have no recollection of it myself. And what was interesting is her own barrister, Ben Myers, got her to read out some of her defence statement, and this included her observation that she did not accept the good faith of either Dr. J. Ram or his fellow consultant, Stephen Breary. She said both men had been set against me for some time, adding, that's obvious from their witness statements, as well as some of their conduct towards me in 2015 and 2016 and after. And what she said was, I am not guilty of what I've been found guilty of. She admitted, as I say, searching for parents of the dead babies online. And she said it wasn't a fascination. And Letby was the only witness to be called in her defence. And the case rested. Benjamin Meyer said that will be the case for Miss Letby. The trial resumes on Monday coming, when the prosecution and defence are expected to give their closing speeches. And I have to be honest, police are not looking great in this retrial. It would appear that details such as times were wrong at the original trial. There are so many police inconsistencies and issues that have emerged during this retrial. And maybe in some respects, this has all happened because it was meant to. I mean, for this retrial to happen a little way down the line from the initial convictions and all of these issues regarding the police showing up, I think is really interesting. Really interesting. So we will keep you updated on that. Absolutely, we will. Thoughts on that, beautiful people? What are your thoughts on that? That looks awful. I've just seen something about somebody's child. That's awful. David said, if she's innocent, her defense have done a terrible job. Super says, blessings and thanks, Sonia. I don't have a telly, would not know what was going on in the world if not for you. You're welcome, darling. Thank you, Public Notice. I do my best. I do my best. I know I can be a little bit, a little bit fiery at times, but you know what? It is that fiery side of me that keeps me going and keeps me battling and fighting. But if nothing else, I am real. I am very real. Right. What's this? Shin said it's so shameful. And poor Lucy and the many like her. Mary says, I'm not 100% that she is guilty. Could she be the fall guy? That is what a lot of people are saying about the original convictions. Of course, we make no comment about the retrial in terms of that. They are literally, these comments are in reference to the original convictions, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if after the retrial, you're going to get, you know, a huge swathe of people saying, okay, there's something needs to be done about this. And we have a petition that we do share, and I will put it in the description, and it's asking for a retrial. I think that's important. Lawyers and members of the Bar Association, says Sail Away. Indeed they are, Sail Away. Indeed they are. Right, what shall I look at next? Excuse me. I saw a video of women from Sierra Leone, rather, and they were singing and dancing in celebration at the passing of new laws in their parliament, which now prohibits child marriage. Yes, really. Imagine it being 2024 and this needs to happen. So you're thinking, which other savage country would allow such a practice? Well, I'm about to tell you, where are child marriages still legal? This is a practice, I have to say, that affects both boys and girls, and it is utterly abhorrent. Now, according to figures from the Pew Research Company, Sudan has the largest gender gap. Girls can marry at 10 and boys can marry at 15 or at puberty without parental or judicial permission. A 10-year-old girl getting married. That's savagery. I don't care. That, I mean, apart from all the other things that it is, this is not right. It can't possibly be right. And then you have several countries have different age requirements depending on their religious affiliation. So, for example, in the Philippines, couples must be 21 to marry without permission unless they are Muslim, in which case Muslim boys can marry at 15 and Muslim girls can marry at puberty. Well, some girls reach puberty at 9, 10 and 11. So that's just, again, abhorrent, absolutely sick, could never support that. In Tanzania, Muslim and Hindu girls can marry at 12 as long as the marriage is not consummated until the girl reaches the age of 15. So you marry off a 12-year-old and you expect her husband not to rape her. Get a grip. And actually 96% of countries have laws that specify when people can legally marry, but only 6 countries, Equatorial Guinea, Gambia, Saudi Arabia, Somalia, South Sudan, and Yemen, do not specify a minimum age for marriage. In many countries, even those that allow minors to wed, there is a minimum age requirement, but not in those countries. And according to the UN, children are often just forced into marriage. Of course, they're forced into marriage. No 10-year-old willingly wants to get married. That's ridiculous. Absolutely no 10-year-old. It's just horrible. It just continues. In Albania, Bulgaria, Macedonia, and the Ukraine, girls in Romani communities often marry below the legal minimum age. And in Pakistan, despite prohibitions, forced marriages are common for many children, some much younger than 15. Yeah, I'll say it again. If you have forced child marriages in your country and you allow it and you're not fighting against it, you're savages. You are savages. That's it. Savagery. But I'm really glad to hear that Sierra Leone's parliament has woken up. It's just absolutely disgusting and sick. So that video that I was talking about earlier, and that was David Cameron, who, like the head of the Secret Services as a foreign secretary, how is it possible, I mean, to a degree, technically, how is it possible that the foreign secretary of Britain gets a prank called by Russians? Tell me that, right? It's on video. And it's really interesting, the things that he admits to. So he thinks that he's having this discussion about, you know, what is going on in terms of his globalist mates. And he admits because they part of the conversation was, you know, what about funding for the Ukraine if the other parties get in at the general election? And he admitted that nothing would change regarding Ukraine and us pumping billions of pounds in, regardless of whether it's Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister or Keir Starmer. I mean, Cameron admitted that. Now, you and I know that. We know what globalists are like, right? You're literally just replacing one for another. We know that, right? And but that was admitted, and I found that extraordinary. But how could he get pranked by that call? Tell me, how could he get pranked by that call? I still can't get my head around it. That's just extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It's online. Check it out. By the way, there's that year again, 2030. And did you know that gassy cows and gassy pigs will face a carbon tax in Denmark in 2030? Well, rather from 2030, that will be the first country to do so. Denmark will tax livestock farmers for the greenhouse gases emitted by their cows, sheep and pigs from 2030. Extraordinary stuff, isn't it? You know that when it starts there, it's going to come to here. We know this, right? Absolutely extraordinary stuff. And it's just extraordinary because obviously we know that kind of like oil and gas countries, they emit more methane than, you know, pigs and cows, and on, and people in their private jets. And so it just absolutely ridiculous. When I read that, I was like, this has to be a joke, right? It has to be a joke, but apparently it's not. In the UK, it is the huge and endless Glastonbury Festival, which is taking place right now. I've never enjoyed that type of thing. It is run by Sir Athelstan Joseph Michael Eavis. He's an English dairy farmer and the co-creator of the Glastonbury Festival, and it takes place at his farm in Pilton, Somerset. And you know what? They still try to sell it as this idea that it's like a bunch of rebels getting together. No, it's not. It's largely a lot of very, very middle-class kids who kind of think they're being rebellious and everything. And I have a picture in front of me of Michael Eavis, or Eavis, can't remember how to pronounce his name, but he's so anti-establishment that he was promoting getting the C-19 jab. I've got the picture right here. In fact, the comment that he put really irritated me. He said he was having this done he had it actually done on New Year's Eve 2020. And he said, wouldn't it be wonderful to get the majority of our population vaccinated before June 2021 so that we can celebrate next summer in proper Glastonbury style? Yeah, not quite sure what that means, Michael, but down with you. And also, I think people are just falling out of love with Glastonbury now because, I mean, it's just ridiculous. And don't forget, they're back on the whole monkeypox thing. They've now shortened it to Mpox. They're telling us it is the most dangerous yet. Make of that what you will. And this week, of course, it's 15 years since Michael Jackson died. I can't fathom that, right? And obviously the accusations and allegations against him have overshadowed largely his phenomenal musical achievements. He died on June 25th, 2009. I interviewed his attorney, Tom. Tom, who had got him off of assortment of charges and allegations, and Tom was in no doubt whatsoever that he was not guilty in any way, shape or form. MJ, of course, was killed. His it was homicide. It was ruled homicide. His personal doctor, Conrad Murray, said that he found Jackson in his bedroom at his North Carrollwood drive home in the Holmesby Hills in California. He said he wasn't breathing. He had a weak pulse. And Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in November 2011, was released in 2013 after serving 2 years of his 4-year prison sentence with time off for good behavior. At the time of Jackson's death, he was preparing for a massive series of comeback concerts due to begin in London in July 2009. And honestly, he wasn't in any great physical shape to do it. And just the sheer volume of medication that he was taking to sleep, to wake up, it was just awful. Huge outpouring of grief. His death triggered huge grief all around the world, creating unprecedented sort of internet traffic. And as you imagine, when pop stars die, a massive spike in sales of his back catalogue. There was a televised memorial service held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, which had an estimated 2.5 billion viewers. Now, help me in the comments. I watched a really good documentary. Is it called Square 4? And it actually tackles methodically and forensically the allegations against Jackson and how they came to be. And of course, those accusations were extensive. They weren't just based on the Martin Bashir interview. And of course, we know a great deal about Martin Bashir, you know, who was a BBC reporter, and how he had misled Princess Diana as one example. I think it's called Square 4. I highly recommend people watch it, though. I do. Oh, gosh, these comments are going very, very fast. Hugely fast. Wonderful. Let me catch up. What's this? Let me catch up. That, crikey. People, you should see the sheer speed of these comments. Like, I'm fast, right? I'm fast, but woke up late, says Tony Griffiths. Good morning. What's that? Catherine says Glastonbury. An EMF soup. Nothing to, what's that? I used to like going to bike festivals, says Julie. Totally different atmosphere. Yeah, Milford. Glastonbury is mainstream straight. Yes, it is. Yeah, so if anybody can remind me of that Michael Jackson documentary, because I think it's really interesting, really is interesting. And don't forget, I think it's really important to bear this in mind, and that is, before his death, Michael Jackson had deeply, deeply upset the elite in the music industry. Not only had he come out talking about the Illuminati and various other things, but he had also worked to buy back his own publishing back catalogue, which deeply upset people at Sony and Epic Records. So there was a lot of other stuff going on. And I think it's always really interesting when there are things going on. It's so easy, obviously, to demonize people. And honestly, the jury is out for me. I understand, of course, it is not appropriate for an adult male or an adult female to be sleeping in bed with a child. Never, ever, ever. But I don't think any of us believe for a second that Michael Jackson is like us, right? I mean, his childhood, growing up, nothing at all that was regular or normal. And it's highly likely he didn't understand what was regular or normal. But I'm not convinced that he was a child abuser. But again, I could be wrong. And I allow for the fact that I could be wrong, right? I allow for that. Right, let us move on. I need to actually... This is something that I referred to on Monday. I think it was Dan. Dan, I haven't got your letter in front of me, but Dan had asked me to look into the death of Brittany Murphy and her husband, Simon Monjack. And this, what was it, Pip? Pip or Dan, sorry, saying, Sonia, don't you think the Brittany Murphy story is weird, right? And how it had never sat well with them, right? Well, I'm still haunted by that story, frankly. Brittany Murphy was, it was ruled natural causes or murder. They said it was pneumonia, anemia, drug intoxication. This was in December, on December 20th, 2009. She was taken to Cedars-Sinai Hospital. So many Hollywood stars obviously die there because that's kind of like their local hospital. She was huge at one stage. She'd been in 8 Mile with Eminem. She was in Clueless. She was in Girl Interrupted. She looked like she had a massive career. And it was basically her mother and Brittany's husband, screenwriter Simon Monjack, who were living in their house in Hollywood and in the Hollywood Hills. And the months leading up to Brittany's death, they had feared that they were being watched. They had 56 cameras around their property. Why did they think they were under surveillance, right? There was heavy metal detected in her hair, which was analysed after her father insisted that they were poisoned, that she and Simon were both poisoned. There was there was a suggestion that she had been poisoned with rat poison. And some people believe absolutely that this was a deep state operation because all 3 of the people involved, Brittany, Simon and her mum, had knowledge of some kind of trafficking with government involvement. And in fact, Brittany was due to testify about it. right? A government employee, her own friend, claimed that Brittany was being watched. This all revolved around the idea that the government employee had witnessed a security breach at the border, and claimed that government had penalised her for reporting on it. She claimed that she was Brittany's friend, and that Brittany was going to be a witness in this. And so all of that was really interesting. The toxicology reports on Brittany was very interesting. Brittany said that she had, paranormal experiences in the house. She'd collapsed in the bathroom, very sadly. Toxicology is really interesting. Massive amount of pharma drugs found in her system, half of them not even prescribed to her. The local pharmacist, I actually saw an interview, he joked about with her and in this interview about the sheer volume of pharma drugs in their home, saying there were more pharma drugs in Brittany Murphy's home than there were in his chemist's. And she was taking drugs for epilepsy and heart problems, even though she actually had neither. She'd been involved in a car accident several years before. And there were accusations of various other illegal drugs, and that wasn't proven. Her mum, Sharon, it turned out, was going to 6 different outlets to collect pharma drugs for Brittany and for Simon Monjack. And Simon Monjack was curious, British screenwriter. People were shocked when they got together. He didn't exactly fit the Ashton Kutcher type, given that Ashton Kutcher was a previous boyfriend. Simon Monjack, British guy, fairly well together physically when they got together, but then became, fairly obese, didn't take care of himself, and was not that popular around some of her friends. And people wondered who he really was. And there are lingering question marks whether he was her handler, and whether the fact that Brittany died and then her husband died in similar circumstances 4 to 5 months later is extraordinary. People were talking about there being mold in the house and various other things, but it didn't affect the mother, did it? Right, it didn't affect the mother. So that was interesting. So Brittany had died December 2009, and then Simon had died May 2010. And I have to wonder, was Simon Monjack a handler in some way? And was he taken out because he knew too much? I'm just wondering. I don't know the answer. But I do think the whole trafficking angle is really interesting. After Brittany died, Simon Monjack and Brittany's mum gave TV interviews they were talking about they were still living in the house together. And it was really just a weird interview. And there's nothing weird about them continuing to live in the house together. It wasn't like they were having an affair, not that I know about, because they'd been living in the house together before. But I think it seemed very clear to me that Sharon was an enabler in terms of the sheer volume of pharma drugs that she was getting supplied for her daughter. And so, you have to wonder. And it was also interesting that when Sharon was going to all these different chemists, one of the names that she was using for Brittany, because it's quite common for Hollywood stars not to obviously want to use their real names at chemists. And one of the names that Sharon was using for Brittany's pharma drugs was Lola Manlow, right, in order to get medications for Brittany. And as I say, her toxicology report was just absolutely full of pharma drugs and the heavy metal toxicants in her hair, which can also come from hair dye, but it can also come from being poisoned as well. So I think, in answer to your question, Pip, I think that is a story that is going to run and run. And no, honestly, I can see why people have problems with it. I can see why people have problems with it. Yes, I can. Absolutely, I can. Right, people. Oh, email from David. David is not happy. Hello to you, David. He wrote, Sonia, this was enclosed with my latest water bill. I find it a bit creepy that we're being encouraged to see how environmentally friendly we are compared with our neighbours. Is it just me? What do you and your viewers think? Right, viewers, David sent me a leaflet and it said, from Southeast Water, it said, how do you compare with your neighbours? That's one question. It gets worse. It says, sign up to an online account and see how much water you use compared with those around you, and we'll give you handy tips on how to save water. This is a snitchy leaflet. I can see why David isn't happy. He said, could there even be punitive measures down the line for those who fall short? Personally, I don't give a how much water my neighbours use. Is not really any of my business. And he said, give us Rumblers a shout out. He's red-pilled fox on Rumble, by the way. Thank you, Dave, for pointing that out. What do you think in the comments? This looks like they're trying to pit us against each other again. Do you remember how they did that to us during lockdown, right? They were telling us that we should report our neighbours for going out for like longer than the time allocated. I mean, it's outrageous, isn't it? I don't, and what's that? I'm missing this. Ooh. What's this? Some people can be assets. Oh, you're talking about the Brittany Murphy thing. I should have come to you before I read. This is smart meters for water coming. Dilip, you don't know what happened, right? And that is, I came home one day and they had torn up the pavement outside our front gate and they were installing a water meter without my say. And I've always said no to all water meters. And they'd literally done it. Absolutely. I agree with you, Marie. Who bloody cares? Like in lockdown, disgraceful. They're trying to pit us against each other, aren't they? Dave, I agree with you. It is Brett is setting up division. Witch hunt your neighbours, says John St. Francis. Brown shirt, says Brett Wilkinson. Carbon credits for utilities equals end game. I haven't paid for water in years, says Humphrey. Divide and conquer, says Stephen. Yes. Public shaming people on social media, says the Blue Nomad. Do you know what? I think that's what this is. It's fairly outrageous, isn't it? Imagine if you live next door to an eco-fascist, they'll be up in arms if you use, you know, a gallon more than you're supposed to or whatever. Yes, please hit the like button, says Crazy Bunny. That's right. Exactly, David. The water company charges you for the water you consume and the water that goes down the drain. It's their meter, though, says Fred. Yes. And watching on my iPad, I'm missing that. Your water bills are going up in Australia, are they, Juliet? Julie, it is like an abusive marriage, isn't it? Shug says, some call it water, I call it a toxic soup. They're going to charge for air soon, says Golden Orb. It's coming. Capitalism has no shame. Yes, do you remember that stuff in recent years with, Nestle and water? Do you remember that? I must gen up on that. That they are trying to encourage shaming Pink Diamond. I completely agree with you, David. I think people fulsomely and wholeheartedly support your position on this. And remember, people, that the devil needs complicity, and some people are more than happy to provide it. Shouldn't be happening. And look, let me talk about Andrew Bridgen. He obviously gets mentioned a lot. He is a former member of the Conservatives. He's running on an independent ticket now. One of the few members of Parliament who has come out in recent years about lockdown, about the jabs, etc. And I'm absolutely aware that Nigel Farage has yesterday started talking about the second and third lockdown being wrong. No mention, I don't think, about the first lockdown. But we know what politicians do in the run up to election. You know, they kiss more babies' heads and they talk about lockdown, and they try and find out what's popular with you. And they'll say, yeah, now I know what a woman is, and all this kind of stuff. Right. But let's go to Andrew Bridgen. And that is this week, a judge has ruled that the lawsuit that Andrew Bridgen is in with former Health Secretary Matt Hancock, well, that isn't looking great for Hancock. It doesn't mean that this is the final sort of adjudication of it, but it's a sort of preliminary hearing to find out if the things that Hancock has said about Bridgen are potentially defamatory. And yes, I would guess that Bridgen, the thing is, so in common law, it is found that Matt Hancock has defamed Andrew Bridgen. And it still doesn't mean that Bridgen would win when they go to trial, or indeed if he wins, how much he would win, because costs are based on how damaging the impact is on one's reputation. Well, Hancock, I guess, just a guess, will argue that Bridgen doesn't have much of a good reputation to lose in the first place, and thus the tweet did him no great damage. That is almost certainly what his defense that he's finally responding to will say. That's how defamation law works in the UK, and I think is a decent system, frankly. Not necessarily the defamation system, which I think people can sue over madness, but I think the cost is a decent system because it doesn't automatically start from the position that this person has a great reputation, therefore they should be awarded loads. No, what kind of reputation have they got to lose in the first place? And because the fact is, too many people use defamation in the UK to silence critics, but it's also good that there are checks and balances attached to the reality of the situation. And so what will be asked if Bridgen eventually wins is how much harm really did Hancock do to Bridgen's reputation? And all I can say is thank goodness it's not the crazy American system, of course, where people go for multiple millions in defamation cases. It's crazy money and makes justice look increasingly sort of erratic and untenable for people. And it makes it very difficult for people to actually even achieve any form of justice. And so that I think is interesting. And actually, I'm really glad that was ruled, because I also believe that what Hancock said about Andrew Bridgen was defamatory. And it was to do with anti-Semitism. And actually, Andrew Bridgen was quoting doctors, and Matt Hancock, who has so many questions to answer for his role in C19. But Matt Hancock tweeted about Andrew Bridgen, and that is at the centre of this legal case. And I just want to go back to this Andrew Bridgen thing, because I've had so many people send me in this video where Andrew Bridgen is talking about widespread people trafficking and claiming that government and authorities are doing nothing. Andrew, this is a personal message to you. Somebody give him this message. Andrew, you have to do something. You cannot just talk on podcasts about it. You have to do something, right? Because if what you say is true, that means, well, we're sat here doing nothing, even though you've got all this knowledge of people, names and places. That means it's happening right now. It's continuing. You have to do something, Andrew, right? It cannot just be a case that you give an interview and leave it there. So you have to take responsibility for what you've said. And what you need to do now is you need to go and film taking this evidence to the authorities. That's what needs to happen. That will protect you, and it will also let people know that you're legit and legit in solving this situation, right? Needs to be solved. I want to briefly cover ultra processed foods. Professor Carlos Monteiro of the University of Sao Paulo has said that ultra processed foods need tobacco style warnings. And I actually agree with that. The use of ultra processed foods, particularly in the US and UK, are quite kind of shocking. Monteiro and his colleagues have been warning about ultra processed foods for actually 15 years. And as I say, said should be sold with tobacco style warnings. And ultra processed foods are actually displacing regular, healthy, cooked from scratch diets all over the world, despite actual growing evidence of the harms that they cause. And US and UK in particular at the forefront of that. This is the world's this is one of the world's largest reviews of its kind. Not Professor Monteiro, but there is also a further study which was conducted in February this year, and what it found links to 32 harmful effects to health and these ultra processed foods. What the professor is calling for is to ban advertising around ultra processed foods, ban in schools and health facilities. I agree. When I go into hospitals, I think there's something mad about seeing a machine full of soda and junk food. This is ridiculous. And also they need to make better foods in hospitals. When I was in hospital, I was served absolute mush, and I catalogued it, and it's actually in my film, The Business of Cancer. So I'm really glad about that study. Oh my gosh, we're running out of time, and I've been here forever, but I've got to mention this. Fly Me to the Moon, new film starring Scarlett Johansson, Channing Tatum, Woody Harrelson, and it's coming out in summer, released on July the 12th, 2024, and then later it will be streamed on Apple TV. And the premise is based around the 1960s space race between the United States and the Soviet Union. And it's really a kind of rom-com, and with this as the background, and it becomes Scarlett Johansson's job to fake a moon landing, to set up a fake moon landing, right? Obviously I haven't seen the film, but that's the outline of the film, that there is an increasing problem with the Apollo 11 launch, and the marketing specialist, which is Scarlett Johansson in the play, has been brought in to fix NASA's public image and stage a backup fake moon landing. You can't make this stuff up, right? You can't make this stuff. You can, but you can't. You know what I'm saying? And we will talk about the moon landing, actually. I reckon around the anniversary, and I want to bring in somebody to discuss that. And I always think about the quote from Hitler's propagandist, Joseph Goebbels, who talked about the big lie, right? And that is, if you tell a lie big enough and keep repeating it, people will eventually come to believe it. The lie can be maintained only for such time as the state can shield the people from the political, economic, and/or military consequences of the lie. It thus becomes vitally important for the state to use all of its powers to repress dissent, for the truth is the mortal enemy of the lie, and thus, by extension, the truth is the greatest enemy of the state. And that is what I always think about when I think about the moon landing. Frankly, anybody ever seen, can't remember his name, interviewer who approaches one of the astronauts and asks him to swear on the Bible that he went, he starts to get threatened by this astronaut. Yes, interesting stuff indeed. But yes, a lie so big it will barely be believed, says Shug. Right, my parents also brought home cooked meals to the hospital for me, so I did have that as well, says Pink Diamond. Yes, got you. We have lost. What's that? Wait, get the guy in. Forgot his name. Who confront? That's the what I want. Tink123. Exactly that guy. I'm going to look him up. It would be brilliant to have him on this stream, wasn't it? Public notice. I have to keep a low profile as my life is at risk. Don't want to hear that. That's sad. I'm so sorry to hear that. Oh, Rowie says, Sonia, my own grandmother saw a Coke can roll into camera shot during the live feed. Yes, the wizard's words. Buzz Aldrin hit a man asking him to. Yeah, they were not happy, were they? Swear on this Bible. No. Good morning, Wade. Thank you for calling it a great show. Humphrey Fluffy, let's phone the moon on a house phone. That's right. Listen, I have difficulty sometimes receiving calls in here on my fairly up-to-date iPhone, much less dialing the moon. Am I brave? Am I public notice? I'm not necessarily brave, honestly. As I talked on Monday, I'm indignant. I'm indignant. Before we go on to our final topic today, I want to just talk about Prince William. We were talking, I think it was Monday, I talked about how he'd made that unannounced private visit to MI6 the other week. It was 2 days before the trooping of the colours, in which his wife re-emerged into the public gaze. And so I mentioned it, and a number of viewers, I keep going to say readers, because I wrote for newspapers so long, it feels like readers. A number of viewers sent in and pointed out to me that actually it was MI5, MI6, and the counter-terrorism unit at GCHQ, the government's listening post, where Prince William actually did his work experience for 3 weeks in 2019. Right, he was shadowing the Foreign Intelligence Service, then worked with the Domestic Security Service, MI5. And the head of counterterrorism, who notoriously remains anonymous, said William worked exceptionally hard to embed himself in the team. Embed, that's such a spy word, right? And comfortably held his own amongst some highly skilled analysts and operators. His Royal Highness asked some probing questions and demonstrated a real grasp of our mission. I bet he did. People, we've gone for nearly 2 hours today. How has this happened? So I'm going to end, right, on this. A Harvard business professor has come out claiming this one trait is shared by highly successful individuals, and I hear him. It is, he says, a habit that's increasingly in demand. Professor Joseph Fuller, co-founder of the Managing the Future of Work initiative, he was on CNBC this week, and he was talking about what sets high achievers apart from other people who don't reach their goals. He said that the people who succeed are not wedded to some predetermined career path. They're open to unexpected opportunities and embrace change instead of fearing it. So what is this one trait that sets people apart? Adaptability. Adaptability is the ability or willingness to adjust to new conditions in any location. To overcome challenges big and small, you need adaptability skills, whether it's in the workplace or outside of it. Learning how to adapt can also help you thrive. Yes, it can. And adaptability can help overcome wasted time and frustration. You know, when plans go wrong, like you miss a train or you miss this call, it's like perhaps rather than just like be angry and frustrated that things didn't line up, what might help is not only adapt to the new situation that has arisen, but ask, maybe there was a reason why I didn't catch that train or didn't take that call, right? So also look at a bigger view about why things aren't necessarily coming together. Sometimes people let obstacles run things for them. For example, you planned a barbecue and it rained. Well, take the barbecue indoors, right? Focus on new possibilities within the situation that you're left with when your plans aren't going according to plan. And when challenging circumstances come up, it's up to you to remain calm and focus on new possibilities. Being rigid can be your enemy, people, and it will not help you achieve your goals, right? And adaptability is apparently a rare and underestimated and undervalued skill that is now being put to the forefront. And this was quite an extensive study that it was based on. And researchers had studied adaptability's effects on careers. And they took a 2022 6-month period and compared it to the same period in 2023 to see which skills grew the quickest. And at the core of the skills that grew the quickest was the ability to adapt to changing situations. And if you want to learn how to adapt, try different things, go on spontaneous trips, try new foods, read literature that you wouldn't normally, accept criticism, accept constructive criticism, embrace feedback in all areas of life, right? Engage in unusual activities. All of these things will move you from a rigid mindset, and it will also help you to reduce stress. It will improve your communication. It will improve your workplace environment. It will improve your ability to be an entrepreneur. Go beyond your comfort zone, people. Adapt. As the studies are increasingly showing, adaptability skills can help you get where you want to go. Yes, it can. Be adaptable, and you'll be kinder on yourself as well. So I just want to say thank you so much to everybody joining us. Thank you for all the donations. Thank you for all the suggestions. Thank you for all the pictures. Keep sending them in. And in this week, obviously, when journalist Julian Assange has been released from captivity, and I know there's a great deal of question marks about this. And honestly, I promise you that I will not just leave it here on the official narrative. I promise you that. You have my word. I will be looking into this more deeply, right? But for now, I am saying that a journalist was released from captivity. But what we do know unquestionably is that journalism has been criminalized, right, by the United States. That will filter out as a consequence. And I am reminded that the job we do is supposed to be difficult. It's not supposed to be easy. And honestly, the thing is that this week it was the birthday of George Orwell, right? 121 years since his birth. And he famously wrote the manual, 1984. What? It was a work of fiction. Are you kidding me? But what he said about journalism is something that I absolutely subscribe to, and I stick by it. And I think it couldn't come in a more pertinent week. And what he said was, journalism is printing what someone else does not want printed. Everything else is public relations. Happy birthday, George Orwell. You lovely people on the stream. I love you loads. Thank you so much for being with us this morning. Dilip, yeah, he was a publisher. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Amy Lee. I appreciate that. Merv said this is a great start to the day. Thank you so much. Love you loads. No, do not vote for me. Public notice. I will never, ever be a politician, but I love you all so much. Thank you for joining us. Thank you to our wonderful mods. Oakford Forest, we will be covering that in future. Yes, great show as ever, says Dave. Thank you so much. Thank you, the Wizard's Words. Love you so much. Have a terrific week. I will see you weekend, rather. I will see you Monday. Take good care of yourself. Love you so much.